So Ricky Gervais is making an idiotic explanation statement, basically ridiculing any book, especially holy books like the Bible, as he calls it, a holy book in implication, of not being able to be recreated if we destroyed them all. But I will show you how hypocritical he is in his statements. Stay tuned.
If we take something like any fiction, in any holy book, in any other fiction, and destroyed it, okay, in 1,000 years' time, that wouldn't come back just as it was. Whereas if we took every science book, right, and every fact, and destroyed them all, in 1,000 years, they'd all be back, because all the same tests would be the same result.
That's good.
If we take something like any fiction and any holy book and any other fiction and destroyed it, in 1,000 years' time that wouldn't come back just as it was. Correction? This is false. There are two erroneous implications he's making in the first part of his idiotic explanation. 1. He's not only calling any so-called holy book fiction, but including all fiction itself. And even though he did not directly state this, he's implying that anything not directly observed is also called fiction because he's comparing it to science books and every fact in them, which is the next part of his explanation. 2. He's making the wrong conclusion that any fictitious book cannot be recreated in 1,000 years' time if they were all destroyed. Take the Bible for instance, which he would definitely call fiction. Not only is the Bible the best-selling book in history, has never been outsold, but also the most popular book in history with the most popular religion in the world, Christianity. It's even in the Guinness Book of World Records for this statistic. Also geographical, archaeological, and scientific facts that we know that are fact today, that has been predated to be revealed in the Bible times, according to history. If you destroyed every King James Bible, Ricky is implying that it can never be recreated in 1,000 years. That's ridiculous because how do you know people have not memorized the Bible? There are people who have memorized entire books of the Bible, like Dr. Henry Halley who wrote the Bible Handbook in the early 20th century. It explains on the back cover, or in the preface, that he has memorized entire books of the Bible. How many people do you know if they have memorized entire books? Probably quite a lot. So of course in 1,000 years' time, there's no reason to believe the Bible would not be recreated as it was. He's implying that people who read the Bible are stupid and would not have the intelligence, and the memory capacity to memorize the Bible. Thus he's accusing them of having low IQs and being dumb people, just because they are religious people, as biblical Christians, who believe the Bible. That's not only prejudice and very bigoted thinking, but also a direct insult to anybody, who is religious by calling them basically, stupid. But here's where he's inconsistent, again explaining as I did before in the previous video, that logic functions with consistency. Something that is not logically consistent has a very low probability of being true. Take something else in history that we have not directly observed, like the Gettysburg Address. If you destroyed every Gettysburg Address document, Ricky believes in 1,000 years' time it could not be recreated, that is if he's going to be consistent in his explanation. So he's insinuating that people would not have memorized the Gettysburg Address and would not be able to recreate it. Again, that's implying that people are stupid who like to study history. It's very crafty that he only mentioned fiction, also including religious books, but did not make the consistent inclusion of all other history we have not directly observed. Do you see how biased he is in cherry-picking where he wants to apply the principle of his argument? He's a contradicting hypocrite, a slithering snake, of no more of an IQ than a gnat. But again, look at what he's comparing these so-called fiction literature to. He says, whereas if we took every science book and every fact and destroy them all, in 1,000 years they'd all be back because all the same tests would be the same result. Rebuttal: he's obviously very oblivious to the fact that science books do not only contain facts. They also do allow storytelling about the origin of the universe and other things. Anything of origin, and of itself cannot be proven effect that we have not directly observed. It can only be believed. Science is not all about facts and reality. It's also based on hypothesis, theories, assumptions etc. None of those three terms are fact-based. So obviously not everything in a science book will be recreated according to his explanation, because a lot of information in the science books regarding the origin of things is based on opinionated theories, not facts. He's also contradicting himself here as a hypocrite, because he's comparing, in his mind, fictional literature that cannot be recreated through the test of time, which it clearly can be by discoveries and people's memorization of them, but also comparing it to science books that he assumes is full of facts and not theories, assumptions or opinions. Also, by the way, there are thousands of different kinds of science books. Does he think every single science book of different kinds could be recreated? That's quite a stretch of an imagination of belief. Also, has he personally done this experiment? No, he hasn't. So he has to base his own explanation on belief, that it could be possible, which would clearly contradict his atheism definition as not a belief system, which it clearly is. Ricky Gervais' conclusion is based on assumptions and belief in something that he has not directly observed himself, most likely, and hasn't even done himself. Therefore his explanation should be discarded. Also, in 1,000 years' time, if this exact video clip was destroyed, could people remember what he said and recreate it? Probably not. Therefore his explanation is ridiculous and obnoxious arrogance that should be taken with a grain of salt.